Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Utski. Before I start properly make music with you, I wanted to talk about a little bit more about motifs. That, as I explained, is a short melodic idea where you can extract, like create melodies out of it. And I will show you some possibilities what you can do in order to create melodies. All right, so what I will do, so first, before I start create music, I usually certain things of my music. The first thing I usually do is to create a description or a background and context what I want from this music. So in this case, I will just say that I want a music that is happy or uplifting, for example, a very simple and basic one. So what I can do, I can use the major scale. So I won't change the key, but I will change the scale to major. I will use a faster tempo. So I will actually keep the 150 tempo as well. And I will use 2 beats, or actually bars, as I explained. 2 beats per bar, but as I said, is more like 2 bars for each bar. All right, I will extend my loop for the whole music. I will touch, hold, and drag the music channels with ones and change the one, the first selected to 0. So now I set all of them to 0. Slarmoo's box has a lot of shortcuts. All right, yeah, you can see in the edit you have the undo, that is not exactly Control Z or Command Z, it's just Z. So you have the undo, redo, copy pattern, paste the pattern nodes, paste only the numbers of a pattern, insert a new bar. That actually in the Slarmoo's box, if you select a bar and touch the number of the bar, you are able to either delete, insert before or after it. You can drag and drop, as I said, to select channels. And you are able to delete the selected channels. Let me just undo it. You are able to select a channel, to select all channels, duplicate the patterns, move all the nodes of the selected bars one half step up or down, move the notes sideways. You are able to generate rhythm with this Euclidean rhythm. Change the beats per bar, change the song length, so you are actually just straight in here. You does not need to add one bar by one. You have the channel settings, so you actually are able, if you, for example, delete a drum channel, you can just add in here. You are able to add the default number of pattern. But actually, for example, if you select a bar, you see that you have, and 0 is basically no pattern. But if you, for example, use all of them, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, if you select the 0 and place another note, goes to the limit +1, so it creates a 9th bar and so on. All right, the max number of bar is actually shared across the instruments, the channels. All right, you are able to change the limiter, but I never used this, and you are able to add custom samples. How this works, you are able to either use a Dropbox, that I couldn't do it with it, or use the Garden file. This one I would able to make it work. So basically, you create a simple account in File Garden, upload the instrument, the audio to it, and copy the URL to that instrument, and hit here add sample. Write the URL. In the options, you set the root key, that is certainly this is the one that you would change most. Select if it is a percussion or not, so that pitch does not change if you place notes in different keys. If it is a loop, you set where it starts, where it ends. If it is a sample that has some silent or sounds that is not, for example, you are able to set an offset. And the loop mode or the reverse the samples. All right. Okay, so now let's start our motivic development and type of use. So I will pick, for example, a grand piano. I will set the fade to the max amount so it becomes a picked string. Remember, beatbox and its variations are mainly used for chip tune type of music. So you are actually, this is the main focus. That's but we are just pushing the limits of it. All right. So I will change the fade. I will decrease the reverb. I could change more things, but I think I would just leave like this. So this is my piano. All right. Since this Slarmoo's box works in a unique grid layout, I'm not able to, for example, place a note in a certain length, such as this one, and place another note in a different key in a different note length. If I short, everything will be modified. So the solution for this is to create adding multiple instruments. PS. So you can add here, hit edit and insert channel with Control Enter. PS. You are able to move. I forgot to say that you are able to move one octave directly using Shift plus up arrow key or down arrow key. Unfortunately, since I'm on mobile, I cannot press shift, right? So the only way that I can move the notes is smoothly is, for example, placing them, holding, touching and hold, and select the whole bar and move it one octave higher. But there's a problem with this. I cannot do this for each bar at the same time. Even move one, for example, here, and I will add this one. I will select these two and then this. All right. If I move one octave lower, this one will be the same. All right. So even though I can use the selection to move around, this does not affect this one. All right. So let's go. Usually, motifs, as I said, is a basic music idea. It fits within a bar, right? So, since, as I said, this is not in Slarmoo's box, we are able to set the bar, the beats per bar, but we are not able to set the bar length, the beat length. Actually, these two beats is actually one bar. So, what I will do? So, this is a whole note in this context, all right? This is not a half. Your motifs are not limited to one bar. Usually it's where you find the rhythm, all right? But you're not limited in this way. So what I will do, I will pick 3 or 4 notes as my starting point. So I will just have, for example, 3 notes. Then I decide which length each one of them will have. Well, I will have, for example, 1/2 or 1/2 and 2/4, for example. So I will have 1/2 and 2/4. Why is this in the same key? Because I first need a good rhythm before I have defined my pitch. This is usually where you want to go with. All right, so we'll have this layout. Well, right, so it is in music notation, half note, half rest, 1/4 note, 1/4 rest, 1/4 note, 1/4 rest. So now let's listen to it. Let me just limit my loop to this one. So now let's listen to it. Okay, as I said, I am using major chord, so I want a happy uplifting music. So usually, to set this type of general mood of a music, you have a lot of tools. All right, it's up to you, but usually you can have these basic settings. So the main one is the scale. All right, the second one is the tempo. The third is the sequence directions of notes. And lastly is the instruments. As I said, you have way more than these four, but in a basic scenario, as I said, you have this 3-1. All right, what is the chord? Well, I am in a major, C major music, right? So what is my chords? So the notes I could play with using the chords built on perfect thirds are C, E, G, and B. So I am able to spread this motif rhythm that I got across these chords if I want to use the chord as my guideline. So I will use the, for example, E and the G. All right. If you touch this number between the bar and the sound icon, you are able to handle some settings of the channel. So you can rename it to the actual name of the instrument, rearrange the channel orders, mute or solo the channel, so actually mute the others one and only allow this one to play, insert a new channel right below, or delete the channel itself. Well, I used this one just to play the chords, so I'll just mute this and go back to my motific one. So now I have this motif. Actually, it's pretty fast, so I will set my tempo to, I don't know, 130. So now that is cool. Okay, that is cool. So I have my motif. So now let's go to what I can do to motifs in order to develop it. All right, I have a list right here in my notebook, in my that I wrote down in a pen, just to remember whenever I'm making a music, what I can do to a motif, right? So the first thing you can do to develop a motif is to stepping up or stepping down. So you can use the scales notes only or not. This will touch in that term that I talked about, chords, that is the chromatic or diatonic. If you use only notes in a scale, you are being diatonic. If you use notes out of the scale, you are being chromatic. So in this one, I will be chromatic. So what I will do, I will hit edit, copy pattern, select these two, and paste pattern notes. Then I will select, so I will touch, hold, drag, and one step up. So this is my first and one of the smallest way and simple step you can do to develop a motif. So here is the current state. Or you can step down. And as I said, you can be diatonic. So actually, I will use only notes within this scale. So I will go to D in here, F, and A. You can move on lips. So you can, instead of move in steps, you can move on lips. Remember that I said that lips are basically anything that is more than one whole step. So instead of going from C to D, go to E, for example. And we have the transposition, where instead of jump one half step, one whole step, the 1/3, you jump straight up one octave. You can change the order the notes are being played. So even though some some things that I will talk about here have proper names, I don't know all of them. All right, most terms on music is in Italian, all right, because commercial languages changes all the time. We had Greek, we have Latin, we have Italian, we have French. Currently mainly support by technology is English, but it can change anytime. So we have a lot of Italian terms on music. All right, so we have the flip horizontally, or it is called retrograde, I think. So when, for example, instead of my C E G is G E C. So now or you can flip vertically. So you can change the roles of an instrument. For example, for now I have this piano playing the melody in the octave 5, and I could have lower registers of the same instrument. So I will click insert channel. I will, in this my original channel, hit copy button right here, because you can change or modulate an instrument and export, like saving the instrument. I will copy here. In the second one I will paste. So now I basically have two pianos that actually represent only one in my case. So here I'm playing this melody in a higher octave, for example, and this one in the lower octave could be my bass, for example. So what I can do, I can change the role. So now this will play my bass, and this will play my melody. We have the change of the technique. All right, so remember that I talked about articulations, and that is up to the musician. Well, here I cannot simulate certain special effects or articulations, all right, in the same instrument, but we have some other techniques. You are, for example, able to select this as your violin, for example, and try to play the pizzicato technique in a violin by either modifying the violin, but there is an instrument preset in here as well, here in the type. If you go, for example, to the strings presets, you can find, for example, the fiddle, the tremolo, and here in the picket strings, the pizzicato. So it's actually, you can change how one instrument is being used in order to apply this other technique. Another thing that I can do, for example, I'll mute this one and I will repeat the melody. But now I will alternate between two adjacent notes. Remember that technique that is trill? So I will do it in this note, for example. Or I could, for example, if I have this as my chord, right? I can, instead of playing all of them at the same time, I could arpeggiate this chord, playing something like this. So now I can change the direction. So for example, if my melody are ascending in sequence, actually I can descend. I can change the notes length and I am retardando or slowing down. I can have the tonal shift. Remember that I talked about the tonal shift, that is basically the center note of your music that usually you go back with or play the most. Here I have, for example, the C, and I could, for example, play this twice just to show you, and then I go to another tone such as G. So I'm changing the tonal shift. I can change the scale. So from C major, I can go to C minor, for example. So this is my melody in C major. I do not have E in a C minor, so I adjusted. So now I have the liquefaction. So I basically dilute my melody more and more. So if I have, for example, a very complex melody, you dilute this into a more simple one. So for example, let me do the opposite direction. I have this, that is my motif. Now I will make this into my melody. So I will, for example, so this is my melody. And I liquefy it by making it more simple. Let me put it this way. So I make it less dense. And I can liquefy in the level of my motif. I can use fragmentation. So if I have, for example, this, my most complex melody, I can actually select 3 or 4 notes of this more complex and say that that is my new motif. So now I'm able to extract motifs under a melody that was made by one motif. So actually this is a very common approach to music melody. You make the basic idea with Motif, and you make it more complex, more complete. Then you pick part of this melody and develop even more. So actually this part is your new temporary motif. So in this case, for example, I will pick the first 3 notes and make it my motif. And I am able to develop even more. We have the chord progression. So the modal shift changed the scale of the music. The chord change is actually could be just the progression of the chord. So here my progression is C major, right? Then I am able to progress to, for example, E minor. I can have the textural change that is related to the instrument. So, for example, I have this melody right here, and I basically play it in a different instrument. I will adjust just a bit of the fade in and the fade out, and the reverb, and I just hit copy, paste, and ideally I adjust the register, the octave as well, because some instruments just aren't able to play certain register. For example, you are not able to play the register of a cello in a violin, for example. So usually you have this sort of adjustment. Is the transposition as well. So actually I will move this 1 octave higher. I have the rhythm term change. So actually I change the disposition of the notes and its length. So for example, I can add syncopation. That is, as I mentioned, being a little bit anticipated or delayed. So for example, I will change the rhythm to 112, for example. Copy this, paste in a new number, and actually, for example, make this second beat a little bit anticipated and this a little bit delayed. So even though you might think this is not good, in general it is good, sound more natural, but there is a problem with syncopation. You should not overdo. Ideally, only one voice or one instrument should be syncopated, not all of them, because we would lead to that problem that I talked in the beginning of the playlist, where we humans like pattern things, predictable things. So if everything is in the wrong timing, nothing will actually make sense for us. You can make counterpoints. Well, counterpoints is adding different voices doing different things in a different directions or different pace. In general, playing the same melody or playing or same part of that music, like being correct, but doing it in a different way. So for example, play the motif 4 times, for example. But now I will, instead of doing this C, E, G, I will do in a contrary motion and in a different technique and rhythm, for example. Listen how this will make a music or sound differently. So we have two contrasting voice, actually harmonically correct, but doing different things. These make us like going crazy. And actually, this is a path. This counterpoint is basically the basis of a certain type of music, mainly classical, called fugues. Fugues is basically when different melodies played together actually create a new melody, but each voice, each instrument, each melody is basically independent, but playing them together creates a whole new thing. Usually fugues is way more strict. Instead of doing this, only change the length of the note and the direction of them. I should actually pay attention to the position, the chord position of them. Actually, this should be like, if this was a fugue, my first bar of an instrument should actually answer the previous one in 1/3 higher, for example, actually alternating in tonic and dominant. And usually the more voice, the more instrument is stacked, different positions each voice should fill. The first one should, for example, alternating between the first and the third, the next between third and sixth, the next between sixth and 10th, and so on. So fugues is a really like an universe, an universe. Or for example, counterpoints in canons. Canons is when, for example, you have a melody being sung by one voice or instrument. Remember, when I say voice, is instrument. So you have a voice singing, playing the melody, and in the next bar, another voice is start the same melody, but one bar delayed. Let me put it this way. So, for example, you have A, B, C, D, and I continue, for example, E, F, G, H. The voice below me is start A, B, C. So actually we have something like this. I will just show you for as an example. So my voice is delayed by 1, for example. So now I will start here. Actually, it should be very similar, differently from fugues, where voices should be different from each other in different rhythms, in different directions. For example, we have the anticipation, where, for example, and this is my bass, for example. So instead of doing this, I anticipate, for example, this inversion, and this, for example. So now, and also we are able to use the volume for the development. Ideally, instruments should have different volumes naturally and making them changing these volumes throughout the music actually make everything more interesting. So for example, here in the modulator channel, I will change the whole song volume, for example, to the half, and here in the beginning I set as 100. All right, so as an example, you are able to not only anticipate a certain thing, actually you are able to make a whole bar of the next sound, of the next subject or theme being anticipated in a different instrument. For example, this is called a phrase overlap, where for example you have a cadence that, as I said, is related to the chord progression, usually greater than a third, for example. So if your chord progression is 1 4 5 1, for example, in the last one, your next phrase, for example, one bar is totally anticipated. We have the call response. So instead of only one instrument playing something, you can either play the same melody in a different instrument with a little bit of change, or split the bar within the instruments, and actually they will like play in a different moment. So for example, I have this motif. All right, so what I can do, making a call response with the cello, for example, and the cello will play this C and G. Here is an example. This is my motif. All right, I use this, then this again, and this again. But actually my response will be a little bit different. So instead I will go to G, E. All right, so this is my call response. Or the whole music. So instead of just one bar, the whole bar. Or you can, instead of having this call response where things change, actually keep the same thing, but this will be called as an echo. All right, so actually the sound is being echoed. But usually you are doing another thing at the same time. So actually an instrument is just echoing the melody, but only for like this phase. For example, and you are able to, as a last thing, change the tempo, the time measurement, and so on. And ideally you should, so this is the things that I use to develop a motif, but usually you just pick one and do only one at a time. Probably your music will just sound the same thing for very long period of time. You don't have like contrasting area. So ideally you should pick one of them, unless you think it is very contrasting enough, only one. So for example, the retrograde is change the order horizontally of the beat of the note. Maybe you think this is quite enough, but in for example, in a step down or in a leap or in transposing, for example, you might actually more than one thing, for example. So you not only step up, for example, but you also progress the chord or change the volume or echo and so on. So usually you mix all of these development things. All right. And remember, I used some instrument as an example, but you actually are able to use any instrument for these things. For example, you are able to have your drums doing something in the strong beat. So as I said, we divide the bar, for example, 1 and 2 and 3, depending the bar length, the time measurement. So for example, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you only hit, for example, the hi-hat in the beat 2, for example, by only changing this beat to this hi-hat hit to a different, you are as well developing, you are changing the one of the voices. All right. So but as I said, usually it's more than one thing unless it is contrasting enough. All right. Remember, as I said, usually beatbox, Slarmoo's box, and so on is used for cheap tune type of music, such as I said, the Undertale music style. All right. So this is basically a genre of music. It is gaming music in a certain style. But when you, for example, look in the genres of music, for example, as such as metal, such as lo-fi, such as samba from Brazil. Here is Brazil. They have some standard approach to each one of them. A certain, for example, jazz is one of the most remarkable genres to not follow completely this type of pragmatic steps. All right. So remember to search, to do research in which genre you want to make music. I hope I didn't pass or share anything that is false or that is wrong. I really hope, but I'm not a musician, so something might be like not that much correct or even limited. But in the next videos, I will try to show you how to make music using this knowledge I shared. All right. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.